Good morning, Pierre.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Maureen.
We are learning conversation.
Yes, we are. We've been doing this for over a year, over 100 podcasts, and we are learning conversation.
Are we
I,
though?
well, I think so. Maybe somebody else would be a better judge than we are, but I am so excited to be learning conversation. Um, I guess pun intended, but
Okay.
really excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something, yeah, I
It's
don't know.
important to keep talking
Yeah, lots of
and
good
listening.
things. Lots of good things come out of it. I remembered you with that classroom, you're going to teach the the writing arts or something, and but listening is a part of it. That was so cool. Yeah.
Oh, the guy
Did
that
you-
yeah, the guy that was silent for 17 years on the
Yeah.
ragged edge of silence. Yeah, and then teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
What did you want to talk about and listen to and learn conversation about
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. I forgot what we were going to talk about. Oh, I know. Retirement. Retire work and retirement. That topic, a big subject, as Bikram would say. But
Well, a big
let's
topic.
chat a little.
Well,
You're
let me
still
let me let
you're of retirement age, we'll say, and
yeah.
stage, but yet
Yeah.
you're still working.
Well,
So
let's
hi.
just jump in right there. Okay, let's just jump right into the pool with the word retirement.
Oh yeah. Okay, what does it mean?
It's, I mean, I know everybody looks forward to retirement, and then there's vacations to, you know, the Caribbean or Acapulco or like these wonderful fantasies of retirement. But think about that word, like retirement, sunsetting, withdrawing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't well, first two things. Retirement, the action or fact of leaving one's job and ceasing to work. The withdrawal of a jury from the courtroom to decide their verdict. Okay. That's one thing.
Right.
The second thing is I'm gonna call BS on everybody. You said everybody looks forward to retirement. I don't know about that. I'm gonna question that.
No, that's right. Well, you're talking to,
Scary for
an
people.
Italian French person who self-disclose, I exaggerate everything, everybody, and there I just exaggerated again. It's not everybody, but it is commonplace that, in our culture, retirement is looked forward to. There's,
Yes,
a
a
lot
positive thing. Yeah.
as a positive thing, and
Mm.
there's so many people, especially as they approach retirement age, who are really looking forward to it. They need the break from the work they've been doing, and God bless them. That's wonderful. And work can be a grind. I decided somewhere in my late teens, I think it was around 19 or something, that I never wanted to retire, and work right up until the last breath, essentially.
Are you one
And
from the I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of group?
no, no, no. Um, I was in a car accident. We talked about that, and I didn't know what I was able I was going to be able to do, if much of anything. And so brain trauma, very obvious in our podcast,
I was gonna say that explains a lot.
even decades later.
That's not
But
funny.
but anyway, I felt it to be a responsibility that if you can do something, you should try and do that thing. And what are we on God's earth for? And how do we live fully? Um, and I think that the word work, and retirement, they mean a lot of different things, and jobs have changed, and what retirement is has changed. And my grandparents were both physical laborers, with wood and with stone. Um, my French Canadian grandfather with wood, a carpenter, my Italian grandfather, stone cutter. These are jobs and work that's very difficult, and you
Labor
reach
intensive, yeah.
labor intensive, and you reach a point where your body gets tired and you need a rest. But work has changed. Work-life balances have changed. Right now, I'm working and I'm in Central Washington, Zooming to my workplace, and um,
Do you think it's gone from like, yeah, more physical stress to mental stress? I think that's, the types of jobs and the stress of work, right? It's
there's
both still. I mean, there's
there's a
still
lot
people
of you're
labor,
right,
but
Maureen. You're right, Maureen. I think there's a lot of stress with work, and I think that's the issue that comes up when we start to talk about retirement. And I know personally, and I think it applies to a lot of people, most people, um, having work-life boundary, balance, and work boundary. I was up last night and I was processing work like crazy in my head.
Mm,
Um, Not a bad thing.
mm,
But I remember when I had my own business, I kept a notepad, and in the middle of the night, I would, you know,
yeah.
get up and write things down.
Yeah, me too. Same thing with teaching. Like I would, think of different ideas or kids or, whatever. And same now. I mean, it's hard to draw that boundary in your brain, like, you know what I mean? Like it's hard to process the stress, of work. But I think as I got older, I got more deliberate about how to do that, the need to do that, to process the stress of labor, of work, whether it's mental, psychological, emotional, and physical,
Mhm.
to actively recover and process that and then compartmentalize it and keep, boundary, like you said, the boundary of work and home life and that balance. And I think it's got to be an intentional thing,
Yeah,
and people have to be clear about that because it can bleed into, right, everything. And
yeah.
yeah, but maybe retirement is a
Well, I was,
relief from having to do that work too. Like it's a relief, like, oh, I don't have to do that balance and boundary anymore. I can just do, what I'm free to
I,
do, whatever.
yeah, it depends on how, people want to lead their life. I say to my
Yeah.
children, life is long, and these balances sometimes can be made in a lifetime. Like, I'm going to work really hard, and then I'm going to retire, and I'm going to do the things that I want to do. That seems to be one of the models. There's other ones where you balance things as you kind of go along and whatnot. I had this friend, and you might appreciate this. This was a joke that he told on Johnny Carson show.
I was just
Um,
gonna say balance for one person looks different from another too. What might look extreme for one person isn't. It is, so there's that too.
right. And
But
I've been very fortunate in, having jobs that allow me to have some balance and be able to look forward to, continuing to work. Although I will say that many people that came after me to do some of these jobs absolutely, were torched. There's a bit of an attitude factor that helps with that. But back to my friend who told this story joke on Johnny Carson. The joke goes like this, and I'm a terrible joke teller. I'll get this wrong, but the bare bones of it is, life is really lived backwards. Wouldn't it be better if, you're born and you're on vacation, you go to work and you get a gold watch, like a retirement gift.
Mhm.
You work, and then at the end of work, you are in, the prime of your life, having girls and, dating. And,
Excuse me.
and then at the end, you're a gleam in your father's eye.
Mm,
But, just the whole backwards concept that, life at the end should be really pretty spectacular. And I think that we're just podcasting about health and fitness. Being fit helps people and healthy, approach older age um, in a different way. And then work. I had an aunt, and she lived to be over 100. She worked till she was 93. Um, and you have to qualify some of this work. She worked as a legal secretary for many years until she retired, like in her 60s. Then she went to work for my sister and brother-in-law, where she did their bookkeeping, accounting, payroll. And she did that for like 30 more years. And
awesome.
one day, one day at the dinner table, it was a part-time job too. But one day at the dinner table, she said that she was going to retire, and she was going to move. She was in her 90s, about 2 hours away. And it was just incredible. And I remember visiting her in her late 90s, and she would always say, "I feel great." And it was one of the few people that I knew that was that old, that she only went to the hospital once, which,
Amazing.
yeah, she
Right.
never, yeah.
Yeah. My grandfather was like that. He was pretty healthy. My father's father, Greek, he lived until he was 94. And really the only reason I think he died is because someone broke into his house and he chased them out with a butcher knife and he broke his hip, and that was that. But he was like super healthy all the way up until that time. But you were talking about the joke and the backward planning. It made me think of backward planning, which and Dr. Peter Attia, and maybe we can do a podcast on him soon.
Okay.
He just came out with a book, and I remember him talking about like this chart he uses where he, if you want to live into your 90s, like actually planning for that, and what, looking at the metrics and the data. He's a cardiologist, I think, of like,
Right.
what do I want my numbers to be when I'm this age?
Right.
What's realistic? And then actually planning backwards, to 60 or 50 or whatever. And what do
Right.
I need to do to get to those measures and those measurements? And like, and it makes me think of when I was a teacher, it was backward planning. Like you decide what the goal is, you specify it, and then you work backwards to plan, how am I going to get there?
Right.
And that's how you do your lesson plans or whatever, and your objectives. So
Well,
it just made me think of that, of like,
well,
okay,
that's cool.
yeah, if you specifically
Yeah. Well,
want to get to 90, what do you need to do now at 55 to get there?
if you just come back to the original question, retirement and work, and backward planning to lifestyle, if you're able to work beyond retirement age and into later years,
Yeah.
just the ability to be able to work, if that's one of your goals,
Yeah.
you can do some backward planning around that.
Right.
You can't be certain things.
Yeah.
And
But
I
I don't
think,
know, we were talking about the cultural kind of accepted belief of like, okay, you work 40 years and then like you look forward to retiring at such and such an
right,
age, around 58 to 68, we'll say, okay,
right, right,
roughly. And like that's how we kind of conceptualize how to plan our lives. But if you think there's other ways to think of that, isn't there? And then there's the definition of work. Like what you said it right when we started, like, okay, it's how do you define retirement? How do you even define what does work mean to people? I mean, that word's
well,
loaded too, right? Like, what does
right.
work mean?
Right. Well, so here's the funny thing, right? Talk about, we'll just wrap this all up in this, go back to the live life backwards, backward planning, the joke and everything like that. So when I was younger, I thought that, hey, at the end of my life, I will be successful. I'll have my own business. Work will look like, hey, go in on Tuesday, tell all these young kids, hey, you're doing a great job, and manage the books and have the enjoyment of the business that I built. And so it's a little bit ironic that I have an entry-level job in public service right now as like 9 to 5 routine. But I tell everybody I'm the happiest guy in the world. I'm doing something I absolutely love. The mental stimulation that you get from work challenges and having to think things through and being presented with new problems. Fortunately, I'm working in a capacity that's got it's opportunity rich for problem solving and actually is a dynamic public service environment to do some of that work
with purpose and meaning, something meaningful, right?
Yeah, there's also that too. I mean, it's the work I'm doing is tremendously meaningful to me, and I think the people around me. There is having been a public servant before on an elected basis, and being both private sector and public sector experiences. There are jobs in both that you're a cog in a machine pushing a process along, and that's soul sucking, I guess.
Why? Because you feel disconnected from the benefits that you're giving people or something, like you're just too far away from maybe the benefits that it provides
Yes,
for people.
yes, this great yogi that I know, his name is Dharma, and I can't place his last name right at the moment. He's had a yoga studio in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
He's the gentleman you see in some of these yoga pictures that stands on his head with no hands. His hands are up straight.
Okay.
It's
What did he
incredible.
have to say about work?
Well, it's interesting. He's from South America. He came to New York, couldn't get a job. And he pushed a broom in a mental hospital for years and years and did yoga on the side, then finally opened his own studio. This studio is about the size of a small kitchen.
Yeah.
And the changing room is like this bereft curtain that you can barely fit behind one person, and then you come out.
Simple.
Dharma Mitra is his name. But I'm going back to the soul sucking jobs. There could not be a more soul sucking job than what he did for a very long time, pushing a broom in a mental hospital in New York. And I think that when I would talk to people about work, I've had my own business. I've worked also in the private sector for a big company. I said, it doesn't really matter if I'm making doorknobs or if I'm saving lives. There is an intrinsic value to doing the best that you can to serve other people. And the capitalist equation for me is a spiritual equation at its core. I have something, I've made it in some fashion, I applied my efforts to it. We'll just keep it really simple, boil it down. I have something, I make it well. I make it well because I want more people to have it, and I want to receive the benefits from that.
Mm-hmm.
You have something, I don't have it. You want what I have, I want what you have. If I get what you have, it's going to make my life better. There's an exchange, and it benefits both people, and it's a fair exchange. Money is involved now as the medium of exchange. and it disconnects those root values. But if you focus on that, and you're an honest person, and you apply yourself, then the work you're doing is good work.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah,
a simple equation. That's how I've lived.
yeah, and I've learned a lot from you about thinking about business, working in business that way, business as you know, in terms of value and like people's gifts. And I also went to school with a guy, older gentleman I've told you about, who worked as a manager for many years and in business. And my bias and prejudice and ignorance when I was younger was like, oh, I don't want to be a cog in the wheel. Business is boring. Like, it's just making products or services that I'm disconnected from. And I didn't see the authenticity or the value or the social
And the
connection in any
dynamism.
of that. Right. None of it. And so I wrote it off and said, I'm a people person and whatever, became a teacher and now therapist. And okay, I'm a humanist at heart and
Right.
more philosopher. So that's appropriate for me. Right. And I'm physical and I do that too, the yoga and whatever. So, but I did learn from you and this other gentleman, like helping people realize their gifts and then like giving that away and reciprocity. And like, managers are so important for people's growth and potential and self-realization within
It's
that
amazing.
dynamic business environment. And your description of like whatever the capital thing, capitalism is so counter to so many people's like, negative description of capitalism. And we know there's the corruptions and the downsides, because there's downsides to everything.
It's
But
human nature. That's human nature.
yeah, but your description of it, like just even saying it's like spiritual for you, like I think that's an incredibly important
I
thing
called myself
to share.
for many years a business evangelist,
Yeah,
because I tried to spread the gospel of, this exchange of goods,
yeah,
and its honesty and its worth, even though it's disconnected by this
yeah,
money medium. I was in a very dysfunctional, large corporate environment, and it was like happens, kind of nasty, politics on the inside, power politics, that sort of thing. And I would go to work, and it was so different than kind of the enlightened management that was taking place before this tumult happened. And certainly in a large corporation, you aren't in control of things, and happens in life too. And I thought, well, I can do my job, but gosh, it's difficult in this situation. What can I do? And I it sounds crazy. I tried to go in every day and love everybody I interacted with. Like, try and somehow, in the midst of this really contentious,
still be human, like the better part of your human nature.
yeah. And it was cool because it gave me something to do. It changed the tone a little bit. And there's been another situation too. And I was chatting with my son about it the other day. And he provided the guidance. He said, good managers, when things are easy, are tough. They keep you on task. When things are tough and your job is difficult and whatnot, that's when good managers create allowances, have compassion, uplift you, and really kind of bring you up.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in a lot of startup world companies, things are really tough, but people are uplifted in a lot of ways because they have some passion around what they're working.
Yeah, and we spend so much time at work, and I'm realizing how much a part of, the counseling process and coaching lifestyle, like work is a huge part of people's identity. It's hourly, hour for hour, a huge chunk of life. Like
I
socially, we spend a lot of time there. And then
I actually want to just jump in right there, because that is a huge thing that you said. That's like a sliding board that sends people down into a mess. Work is a huge part of people's identity. And it's like Shakespeare's line, we're actors who come and go, and we play roles. They're roles, and work is definitely a role, just like your husband, family, wife, family person. That's a role. When you confuse your role with your identity, you can find yourself in a very difficult situation, especially when things don't go right and you lose yourself. So this work-life balance,
or at retirement.
or at
And I
retirement.
think that's something, this is what I was going to say, is that, not only am I talking to people about younger people who are trying to feel better and get better and address and solve their problems and so forth and be healthy, is a huge part of the conversation is about, the value of work, of being constructive and useful and purposeful in the world, and making things and being part of, a business or the world, or giving your gifts away. And what are your gifts, and what are, all of that, how are you going to use your resources, and
That's how.
in the future. And then, older people, it's like a lot of them fear, like, okay, like, what's life going to be? This is the life that I've known. I'm good at this. I get so much purpose and fulfillment and meaning out of this. And it is my
Well, that's how I. That's
connection,
how.
everything. Like, am I going to be on a beach, like by myself,
Well,
sipping
that's how I
cocktails? Like,
started.
that doesn't sound like something I want to do, you know?
That's that's how I started the conversation, at 19, talking about being useful, and having that be something that continues. And I think the challenge in retirement, when you stop working 40 hours a week, a big part of your waking life is, what's your identity, what's your usefulness, and doing so, like you offered up, some backwards planning around that, and kind of testing out whether the beach life, the golf life, the social life, is what
Yeah.
you.
A big,
I do.
it's a big
I,
transition. And
yeah, I do.
a big part of health is work, and there's also the other problem of, the military's having trouble recruiting. They're saying younger people aren't working, part-time jobs in high school like we once did. And, there's less work. And even those early life jobs, it's like, you don't know who you are, you have zero skills, but it's so important to dig your hands into things and start at the bottom and learn how to be in a work environment, quiet.
Well, that's another.
It's
That's
so
another.
important to our health,
Well,
how we
that's
feel
another.
about ourselves, our confidence, our assertiveness, all of it.
Yeah, that's another thing about, capitalism and labor, and all the rest of that. People talk about, hey, you need a working wage and everything like that to feed a family and do all the rest of this. And, frankly, there are a lot of jobs where, I talk to every Uber driver and Lyft driver and all the rest of that. And a lot of guys are retired.
Mm.
So maybe this is a good wrap on it, but you know, they're not doing that job to feed their family. And there are jobs like, that, I had in my teens, um, that aren't really meant to feed families. You've got to have some sort of way to get into the shallow end of the pool, and
Well,
um,
yeah, and then there's jobs, and then there's work. Like, again, defining work? You know, what is your work? Like in psychology, it's like we're doing the work of healing. You know, I mean, there's lots of ways to think about
That's true.
work and labor, a labor of love, you know, laboring at the gym, you know, laboring in your to make your relationship better. It's there's a lot of types of work, you know, and then there's
Well, I'm
jobs.
gonna use that as our outro, and then maybe it'll come up soon in a learning practice or a learning conversation. But I really appreciated this learning conversation and kind of being interviewed a little bit about work and everything. So
Yeah,
thank you.
and learning
Or
about
you.
right, learning about you and work in general. Maureen, I'm Maureen, Landscapes for Learning. Learn to live, live to learn.
Yeah, this is Maureen. She's the bomb from Landscapes for Learning. Check out the website, and it's cool. We're building up a bit of a repository of pods here. And I'm Pierre from Yoga Heals Everywhere. Peace through grace, my friends. May you live a long and healthy life. Peace through grace.